For centuries, one symbol has provoked fear, fascination, and mystery. A symbol that has passed through secret temples, forbidden books, and nocturnal rituals, carrying a code so deep that few have ever dared to decipher it. I'm talking about Baphomet, the figure once called a demon, but, for those who truly understand its hidden meanings, reveals something far greater. A truth that belongs not to any religion, but to the very nature of humanity itself. Imagine for a moment that everything you've been told about good and evil is nothing more than a distorted reflection of ancient wisdom. Imagine that the symbols society feared, burned, and buried actually hold secrets about the power you've always carried inside. Behind the image of a winged goat, with a burning flame on its forehead and enigmatic gestures, lies a message meant only for those willing to look beyond the surface. And this may be the moment you cross that threshold. This is not just any symbol. This is one of the most controversial icons in history, used in Inquisition trials, reinterpreted by occultists, twisted by churches, worshipped in secret rituals, and feared by millions who never truly understood what they were looking at. In this video, you won't just learn about the hidden history of Baphomet. You'll understand why this symbol was silenced, what power it truly represents, and how seeing it clearly can change the way you perceive reality itself. And that's exactly why you can't just watch part of this story. The most important details are hidden in the deeper layers. If you're here, it's because you carry a rare kind of curiosity. And it's that curiosity that opens portals to truths that have been locked away for centuries. So take a deep breath, keep your mind open, and prepare to dive into a symbolic journey few have ever dared to take. Subscribe to this channel now so you won't miss any of the knowledge that's coming, because every symbol revealed is another piece of a puzzle that has been forming for generations. By the end of this video, you won't see Baphomet the same way again. You'll see a mirror reflecting what's been hidden at the center of your own consciousness. The name Baphomet is wrapped in a thick fog of secrets, accusations, and hidden meanings. Its first documented appearance dates back to the early 14th century, during the turbulent persecution of the Knights Templar. On the night of October 13, 1307, the Templars, one of the most powerful military and religious orders of medieval Christendom, were arrested under the orders of Philip IV of France. Accused of heresy, blasphemy, and secret rituals, they were interrogated and tortured, and among the many charges brought against them, one stood out: the alleged worship of a mysterious entity called Baphomet. No one at the time truly knew what the word meant. Some chroniclers suggested it was a corrupted version of Mahomet, used pejoratively by medieval Christians to refer to Islam. Others believed it was a cipher, a magical password, a name reserved only for those initiated into the order. What intrigued both historians and occultists in later centuries was that no physical idol of Baphomet was ever found, but interrogation records repeatedly mentioned a sacred head with mysterious powers, said to grant knowledge, protection, and spiritual illumination. Interestingly, these descriptions never portrayed Baphomet as a demonic being, but as a symbol of secret wisdom. Over its 2 centuries of existence, the Templar Order had accumulated enormous wealth and, more importantly, knowledge, maps, manuscripts, and esoteric teachings far beyond the control of the official church. Their rumored contact with hermetic and alchemical wisdom became part of Europe's cultural imagination. When the order was violently dissolved, the idea that the Templars worshipped a hidden entity didn't die. It spread like wildfire through whispered stories, legends, and conspiracy theories. Centuries later, in the 19th century, this forgotten word resurfaced through the work of one of the greatest occultists of the modern era, Eliphas Lévy. In 1854, in his book Dogme et rituel de la haute magie, Dogma and Ritual of High Magic, Lévy presented to the world an image that would become iconic: a humanoid figure with the head of a goat, wings, a torch blazing on its forehead, and intricate alchemical symbols inscribed on its body. He named this image Baphomet, and from that moment, the symbol took on a clear visual and philosophical form. Contrary to what many believe today, Lévy didn't design the figure to represent evil. For him, Baphomet embodied the harmony of opposites, the union of spirit and matter, light and shadow, masculine and feminine, heaven and earth. Every element was intentional. The female breasts symbolized the feminine principle, the disguised phallus represented the masculine. The hands pointing upward and downward expressed the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below. The torch on the forehead symbolized spiritual illumination, and the inverted pentagram was not a satanic emblem, but a sign of the spirit descending into matter to manifest itself. Levi saw Baphomet not as a monster, but as a silent teacher, a guardian of esoteric knowledge that could only be understood by those capable of transcending the moral dualism enforced by institutional religion. What began as an ambiguous word in medieval interrogation records became, through Levi, a powerful image laden with meaning. From that moment on, Baphomet stopped being a whispered accusation in the shadows of the Inquisition and became a living archetype in the occult traditions of the West. Its association with the Templars remained embedded in the collective imagination, even without concrete historical proof. This link fueled the idea that the order had preserved secret knowledge that inspired later occult movements and secret societies. By reviving the image of Baphomet, Levi ignited a flame that would echo for generations. The winged goat became a symbol of mystery, spiritual rebellion, and hidden wisdom. It transcended time and was reinterpreted again and again, sometimes as a beacon of enlightenment, sometimes as a sign of danger, depending entirely on the eyes that gazed upon it. The iconic image of Baphomet, created by Eliphas Levi, carries layers of meaning hidden in every detail. At first glance, what appears is a striking, unsettling figure, a humanoid body with the head of a goat, angelic wings, female breasts, a torch blazing on its forehead, and a caduceus rising from its lower abdomen. Its hands point in opposite directions, one toward the heavens and one toward the earth, while an inverted five-pointed star shines on its forehead. Nothing in this image was accidental. The goat, an ancient symbol of fertility, instinct, and freedom, represents a primal connection with nature, the wild, untamed side of the human being that exists before any religious structure. The androgynous body conveys one of the most powerful ideas in occultism, the union of opposites. Masculine and feminine forces coexist within the same figure, showing that true wisdom is born not from extremes, but from balance. The wings represent spiritual transcendence, the ability to rise above the physical world. The torch on the forehead symbolizes illumination, the spark of divine intelligence that awakens the mind. The hand gestures express the famous Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, meaning that the spiritual and material worlds mirror each other. The caduceus, a powerful symbol often associated with healing and balance, represents the vital energies that rise within us when we align our dualities. Throughout the 19th century, this image became an icon in occult and hermetic circles. It was not viewed as an evil figure, but as a symbolic map of spiritual evolution, an archetype representing the integration of everything that exists within the human being. It served as a visual reminder that light and shadow, body and soul, heaven and earth are not enemies, but complementary forces. In the 20th century, however, the image began to be reinterpreted, distorted and projected into cultural narratives. As esoteric symbolism slowly bled into popular imagination, Baphomet became associated with rebellion, particularly rebellion against religious and social control. For some, it became a symbol of intellectual freedom, for others a target of fear and misunderstanding. A pivotal moment came in 1966 with the founding of the Church of Satan by Anton LaVey. LaVey adopted the inverted pentagram with the goat's head, known as the sigil of Baphomet, as the organization's official emblem. Although LaVey recontextualized the image within modern Satanism, it's important to understand that he was appropriating a pre-existing symbol with a much older history. As a result, the public perception of Baphomet shifted dramatically. What had once been a complex esoteric emblem was now, in the eyes of many, synonymous with evil. Religious groups denounced it. Popular media portrayed it as a satanic icon. Yet for those who understood its original meaning, Baphomet continued to represent freedom of thought, the harmony of opposites, and spiritual awakening. In recent decades, Baphomet has transcended esoteric circles entirely. It appears in films, books, art, tattoos, music, and pop culture, each generation reinterpreting it in its own way. For some, it's a symbol of darkness and danger. For others, it's an emblem of self-knowledge, inner power, and defiance against imposed beliefs. The power of Baphomet's image lies in this duality. It refuses to belong to a single narrative. It can be both feared and revered, demonized and understood, depending on who's looking at it. That is precisely why it remains one of the most provocative and enduring symbols of the modern world. Not because of what it is, but because of what it reveals about those who gaze upon it. The hidden meanings behind Baphomet are vast, complex, and carefully structured, like a symbolic code. A silent language that reveals its message only to those willing to look beyond the surface. Far from being a figure of evil, as many believe, Baphomet carries multiple layers of meaning that intertwine with ancient esoteric traditions, alchemical principles, deep philosophical thought, and universal archetypes within the human psyche. Every element in its design was chosen to express a truth about balance, transcendence, and the integration of opposing forces. The first key to unlocking this symbol is found in its posture, one hand pointing to the sky, the other pointing to the earth. This is a visual representation of the Hermetic axiom, as above, so below, from Emerald Tablet, attributed to Hermes Trismegistus. It expresses the idea that everything in the spiritual realm has its reflection in the material realm, and everything in the material has its counterpart in the spiritual. It's a symbolic bridge between heaven and earth, mind and body, light and shadow. Baphomet is not just a figure, it's a map of totality. The goat's head, often seen as a symbol of rebellion, actually represents primal creative forces. Throughout ancient cultures, the goat was connected to fertility, freedom, and untamed nature. By fusing this animal head with a human body, Levi created a symbolic bridge between instinct and intellect, between wild nature and conscious spirit. It expresses the overcoming of duality imposed by rigid moral and religious structures. The androgynous body carries perhaps the most powerful message, the union of opposites. By merging masculine and feminine characteristics in a single form, Baphomet embodies the principle of spiritual androgyny found in many esoteric traditions. In alchemy, this is represented by the rebis, the divine hermaphrodite, born from the union of king and queen, sun and moon, active and passive energies. This union doesn't refer to physical gender, but to inner balance. It speaks to the merging of polarities that, when reconciled, generate creative power. The flame on its forehead symbolizes spiritual illumination, the divine spark that transcends matter. It reveals that behind the animalistic, earthly exterior lies a higher consciousness capable of uniting all parts into a single center of light. The inverted pentagram on the forehead, often misunderstood as a satanic emblem, was originally a symbol of spiritual power. Each point represents one of the 5 elements: earth, water, fire, air, and spirit. Inverted, it doesn't symbolize evil, but the spirit descending into matter, not as a fall but as incarnation. It is consciousness entering the material world to express itself. The wings on its back symbolize ascension, transcendence, and freedom. They remind us that while we are grounded in the physical realm, we can also soar to higher states of awareness when we accept and integrate every part of who we are. The caduceus in its abdomen is one of the richest symbolic details. It represents the balance between vital forces, the flow of energy rising and descending through the human body, much like the concept of kundalini in Eastern traditions. The intertwined serpents symbolize opposing energies that, when harmonized, open the way to expanded states of consciousness. It's also tied to healing. In esoteric terms, to heal means to integrate, to unify, to reconcile. Baphomet, therefore, doesn't stand for destruction, but for conscious integration. This figure is not isolated in its symbolism. It carries references and connections to multiple mystical traditions. In the Kabbalistic tree of life, for example, the union of opposites echoes in the balance between severity and mercy, strength and beauty, masculine and feminine, culminating in the unity of Kether at the top. In alchemy, it mirrors the famous formula, solve et coagula, to dissolve and to coagulate, words inscribed on Baphomet's arms in Levy's drawing. This is the central alchemical process, dissolving rigid structures, outdated paradigms, and limited identities in order to reorganize them into a higher, more harmonious state. In Gnostic traditions, the winged goat can also be read as a bearer of forbidden knowledge, the figure who reveals what powerful institutions prefer to keep hidden. This is one of the main reasons why the symbol has been feared and misunderstood. It represents knowledge that liberates, and knowledge is power. Any structure that thrives on control is threatened by symbols that encourage people to look inward rather than upward to external authorities. There is also a strong connection with Western esotericism of the 19th century. Occultists saw Baphomet as a synthesis of ancient doctrines, Pythagoreanism, Kabbalah, Hermeticism, astrology, and alchemy. It became something like a Western mandala, a visual key summarizing spiritual principles. Each element serves as a reminder of metaphysical truths. Psychologically, the symbol resonates with the idea of the shadow in the work of Carl Gustav Jung. Baphomet can be unsettling because it embodies everything humans tend to repress: instincts, impulses, contradictions, and desires. To face Baphomet symbolically is to face the shadow, the part of ourselves that we've exiled to the dark. Integrating this shadow leads not to chaos, but to strength, freedom, and clarity. This is why in modern times, Baphomet has also been adopted as a symbol by countercultural movements and advocates of free thought. For some, it represents rebellion against dogmatic structures. For others, it is a mirror of the coexistence of light and darkness within human beings. Its power lies precisely in being multifaceted. It doesn't belong to a single interpretation, but reflects the inner world of whoever contemplates it. For advanced initiatory traditions, Baphomet also aligns with the archetype of the threshold guardian, a figure that tests the seeker. It's not an enemy, but a portal. Those who dare to look beyond fear uncover layers of knowledge hidden behind the mask. This explains why the symbol has been both persecuted and preserved underground for centuries. It carries truths that can't be fully spoken, only experienced and understood through inner transformation. Ultimately, the hidden meanings and mysterious connections of Baphomet are not about worshipping external forces, but about internal reconciliation. They point towards spiritual awakening, the unification of fragmented selves, and the liberation of consciousness from dualistic chains. Baphomet is at once a mirror and a portal, a guardian and a guide, a symbol and a challenge. And this is why, centuries later, it still fascinates, unsettles, and inspires those who dare to look beyond the veil. When we step into the philosophical and spiritual interpretations of Baphomet, we move beyond surface-level appearances, historical accusations, and cultural fear to enter the domain of metaphor and consciousness. Here, Baphomet ceases to be a figure to fear or adore and becomes something far more powerful, an archetype, a mirror, a reflection of the human being's internal journey toward unity. At the heart of this symbol lies the concept of integrated duality. The androgynous body, the goat's head, and the flame upon its forehead aren't random artistic details. They're visual expressions of a single philosophical truth. Liberation comes when all forces within us are accepted and integrated. Light and shadow, reason and instinct, masculine and feminine, spiritual and material. This integration is what many ancient traditions called the Great Work, a process of inner transmutation where the human being abandons illusions of separation and reconnects with their total nature. Hermetic philosophy, which profoundly influenced the creation of this image, is rooted in the idea that the universe is one, and that all divisions are illusions created by limited perception. As above, so below, as within, so without. This axiom echoes through every line of Baphomet's design. The figure doesn't proclaim good or evil, but reveals a reality in which both are merely reflections of a greater whole. It reminds us that there is no heaven without hell, no light without shadow, no purity without desire. Everything exists within the same container. The flame on the forehead represents awakened consciousness, the light of inner illumination. It's the fire of Prometheus, the divine spark that grants humanity the ability to think, question, and see beyond imposed narratives. This fire is not rationality alone. It's spiritual intelligence, the capacity to pierce illusions and perceive unity beneath apparent opposites. Spiritually, Baphomet is the guardian of thresholds. On every journey of self-discovery, there comes a moment when a person must confront what they fear most: their instincts, desires, shadows, and power. This confrontation isn't external, it's internal. Baphomet symbolizes that point of no return. It silently asks, "Are you ready to accept everything you are?" Those who turn away remain prisoners of duality. Those who face it cross a kind of initiation. Philosophers and mystics have long understood that true spiritual power doesn't come from denial, but from integration. Carl Gustav Jung called this the integration of the shadow, the process of bringing repressed, uncomfortable aspects of the self into consciousness and transforming them into strength. Throughout history, institutions have labeled these parts of human nature as evil or sinful, not because they are inherently dangerous, but because uncontrolled knowledge is difficult to govern. In this way, Baphomet functions as the figure of the trickster or initiator, found in many spiritual traditions. This archetype does not hand out easy truths. It provokes, confuses, and tests. It forces the seeker to abandon inherited certainties and build a new understanding from their own experience. Baphomet doesn't offer salvation or damnation, it offers a mirror. This is why, spiritually, Baphomet represents personal liberation. It doesn't demand worship, devotion, or belief. It's an invitation to become the alchemist of your own consciousness, to dissolve inherited dogmas and coagulate new awareness based on direct experience. This is why symbols like this one were often feared by religious authorities. They encourage autonomy. They grant power back to the individual. Philosophically, Baphomet embodies the coincidentia oppositorum, the unity of opposites, a concept found in the works of Nicolaus de Cusa and echoed across mystical traditions worldwide. Good and evil, light and darkness, heaven and hell. These are relative categories, mental constructs designed to organize human experience. At the highest levels of spiritual awareness, these divisions dissolve, leaving only unity. The figure of Baphomet represents the state of the initiate who has transcended extremes and now stands at the center, balanced, awake, whole. It doesn't represent chaos, but equilibrium. Not submission, but inner sovereignty. This is a philosophical revolution because it bypasses external intermediaries. Power is no longer something outside of us. It is within. The image of the goat with wings and a torch on its forehead, no matter how provocative, is not a call to worship an external entity. It's a call to awaken the fire that's already burning inside. Spiritually, this awakening is what many traditions call illumination, gnosis, samadhi, or liberation. It's the moment when a person stops fighting their own nature and instead channels it as fuel for their ascent. Baphomet also reminds us of something deeply human, that we all carry within us parts that have been silenced, shamed, or rejected. Real growth doesn't come from ignoring these parts, but from bringing them home, from understanding them, disciplining them, and turning them into power. This is the essence of spiritual and psychological alchemy. For many modern seekers, this is why the symbol isn't about darkness, it's about freedom. When observed without fear or prejudice, Baphomet becomes a map. The goat represents instinct, the flame represents consciousness, the androgynous body represents totality, and the gestures of the hands indicate the harmony between worlds. It is the bridge between human and divine. The mystic who contemplates this symbol with spiritual maturity understands that it's not an endpoint, but a portal. The final message isn't worship me, it's look within. And this is precisely what makes it so powerful and at the same time so controversial. To rigid systems of thought, the symbol is a threat. To free minds, it's a key. In essence, the philosophical and spiritual interpretation of Baphomet points to the integration of the whole self, the dissolution of dualistic illusions, and the awakening of a lucid, autonomous consciousness. Baphomet doesn't offer comfort. It offers truth. the kind that shakes you awake. It invites you to stop looking for light outside and instead to uncover the flame that has been burning within all along.